Welcome to the HR department, your front row seat to conversations about the modern workplace and everything shaping the world of work. Powered by HRKyle Services, your guide through the world of work. This podcast is hosted by Kyle Patrick Smith and Becki Smith, two passionate voices bringing decades of experience, real-world insight, and a no-nonsense approach to the issues that matter most to employees, leaders, and HR pros alike. From hiring and culture to leadership and layoffs, nothing's off the table. So clock in, tune up, and get ready. The HR department starts now.
Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the HR department. I'm Kyle.
And I'm Becki.
And we're happy to have you join us today. And if you're tuning in on the HR channel on Roku or Amazon Fire, welcome. We're so glad you could tune in to us there. Otherwise, you might be tuning in via YouTube or some other mechanism that gets you connected to the HRKyle team. But again, we're happy you're here today. Becki, I know you have a jam-packed and very exciting agenda for us to talk about. So without further delay, I'm going to pivot and turn it over to you.
Thank you. And again, we're going to continue with our internship roadmap program and talk specifically about internships those first 90 days.
Yeah.
So let's start with, to us, the obvious, but maybe not to others, the onboarding experience and what that needs to look like.
Absolutely. So one thing that we know, and again, let's give you some background. Both of us started our professional careers as interns. Becki had one as a student teacher. Yep. I had a couple to get me started off in human resources. And the one thing that we've learned from those experiences, as well as the 30 plus years that we've interacted with interns since then as part of various internship programs that both of us have been responsible for and manage and so on, is not every student is ready to make that transition from college and home life and all those things to the true professional world, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So part of what we've built into our program is to account for that and to make sure that they're in the best position to start that internship successfully. But just as importantly, so they come to you ready from day one, basically, to begin to contribute to the organization and from your standpoint, make the most of the internship.
So what that looks like, we're coming up to the finals weeks for students.
Yep.
Basically, mid-May is when they will be ready. And in between mid-May and the 1st of June, which is when we would like them to start their internships, I meet with them, whether it's a virtual meeting, whether it's in person. We can meet multiple times, but we set up, we have questions, they have questions. We can always come back to kind of tell stories so that virtual meetup happens at the very beginning, the onboarding to talk about soft skills, to talk about the companies they're going to be working for, anything that they're concerned about, the pay, anything that they're concerned about from the very beginning before they even step foot into the internship into the company.
Great point. And the thing is, we're focusing on things that we would take for granted. The typical professional who's been in the workforce for a number of years would take for granted. But for these students, it's a first time thing. Maybe they've got to clock into a time clock. Mm-hmm. Maybe they've got to make sure that on that first day they come in with particular documentation. They've never done that before.
Right.
So these are new things that, again, we're taking for granted. Where do I park? Some of them not sure, hey, where do I park? When I visited, I was a visitor. Am I a visitor now or where do I park? So it's a lot of these questions that, again, they're not the big questions. What's my job description? We've figured that out. We've managed this program, worked with a client to make sure we understand that. These are the small questions like, what do I do? Do I get business cards? How do I meet people? How do I interact? Do I schedule meetings? So it's all of these basic things that we try to put them in a position so you're not there, again, as employer the first day, and they don't know things that you would think, gosh, how do they not know that?
Exactly.
But again, we know from our experience, there are just certain things, if you've never worked in a professional environment, you just don't know.
Yeah, and it could be as simple as shaking a hand, standing up, shaking a hand. We had a client where the intern went in for the interview, didn't unbutton his jacket, and that was a concern to the client. And again, just simple questions that, and they may be very nervous, so we can kind of help calm them down and ease them into. And it's also something where I could be, out there and check in at their job the very first day if that's something that, to connect with people if that's needed as well.
Right. And again, we're not talking about giving them a crutch. We're talking about building scaffolding around them so they're successful, the employer's successful. And again, coming back to what I keep saying, making the most of the internship for both the student as well as the company.
Right.
That's what we're doing. Ultimately, it's just like the bird in the nest. We're preparing them, and eventually they're going to be flying on their own.
Exactly.
And that's exactly how we look at it. So again, this isn't about crutches. This is about scaffolding and success.
And individualized as well, because if we have 10 interns, every one of them are not going to be one, that top person's going to fly right in there and be able to start and no concerns, where that number 10 person, could be like, I really need some more help with this. And I may need to meet with them multiple times before they even start.
Absolutely. And the other fun thing that comes out of this, because we build some other things into this program, is that in these sessions, there's a group of students. So it's a student that may be here and another employer and so on. So they're having an opportunity to network amongst themselves and get to know each other, ask questions, help each other and so on. And it's interesting and really cool, for lack of a better term, to see those relationships carry forward long after the internship has happened. And I've seen plenty of those in my career, and you probably have too, where people have built friendships that started in the internship orientation session. And, here we are 10, 15 years later.
And they're still, right.
Yeah.
So moving on then to, in our internship roadmap, we use the 30, 60, 90 day framework. And again, I'll let Kyle talk about that in just a minute. But what that looks like is, again, we don't just drop them off in a company and say, hey, have fun, see you at the end of summer. Right. So it's important that we check in with them every, the first month, into the second month, and then at the end as well.
Yeah. And Becki, that's something that here, you've taken ownership of that, because again, the importance of it, and it requires a deft care to it, because your role is to support them. But as I said earlier, not to be a crutch.
Yes.
So there's coaching, there's guidance, there's the check-in and so on. But ultimately, you're doing it around the goal of, let's strengthen the relationship within the internship, not Becki replace that person's voice.
Right.
So I think that's important as well.
Yes.
But again, we're there to give them that guidance, because again, you'd be surprised how many of your interns start, and if they have a question, they're not sure who to go to.
Right.
Again, not, what's my boss's role? They literally don't know that because they've never had a boss before. So it's Becki's check-in that are saying, oh, you're working through this. Well, you know what? You need to talk to your boss. Mm-hmm. This is some guidance on what you should say and so on. And then on the other side, Becki's checking in with the employer and saying, how's this going? Is the person meeting your expectations? So that, again, realizing that you're stretched with resources. Again, that's why we created this program in the first place. We know organizations want internships. They see the value. They know they're valuable, but they don't always have the resources. So you're checking in with the employer by the same token, not to be a crutch, not to be the intermediary, but to foster the relationship on the other side and ask questions and get some insight into how that student's doing, and possibly give the employer some coaching to say, this is what's happening. Well, let me give you some more insight. Exactly. Here's what's going on here. And then the employer can manage the situation.
Right. So that was a nice segue into a mentorship. Yep. And obviously we need to know who their mentor is. So their coach that's going to, I like the word coaching. Yeah. We need to know that. And the student needs to know that. They cannot walk in the first day and wonder like you said, who am I supposed to report to? Yeah. So it needs to be a coaching versus a managing situation. Talk about that a little bit more.
Well, it can take a lot of different forms. In some small companies, your manager is also your coach. In other companies, depending on the size of the group and so on, you may have a manager, but your coach or your mentor, they're a person in the group. They're a senior member. And sometimes what I'll do is in some organizations, I will talk to that manager and say, who in your work group is more of a high performer that you see some potential in? Because what this can also do for that person, besides help the intern, is provide some developmental opportunity for this high performer. So then, it's a dual win at that point. Mm-hmm. You've got the student getting that day-to-day attention that they need because the manager's here and they've got a lot of priorities, but they know that student's going to have questions or issues at times. So then that helps them. But by the same token, this person who's acting as the mentor, the coach, it's giving them experience in working with someone and being in tune with that dynamic that happens and being a support to them. And again, preparing them for leadership roles in the future.
Exactly. So it could be moving into another role, or they become that person that the intern is coached by every single intern that we send their way.
Well, exactly. Because once they get into this rhythm of what this should look like, then there's that point of contact. And again, it's not about a crutch. Having been in those circumstances, it's nice as the intern to just know I've got somebody to go to.
Mm-hmm.
I may never seek out that person in that dynamic, but knowing that that person's there, they may check in on me every day. They may say good morning, whatever. They see that I'm having trouble with the vending machines or whatever. They're stepping in. It's those little things. Again, these internships are successful, not with the big things. Most organizations are good at that and so on. It's these little things where we see the internships time and again where they either struggle or they're successful.
Yeah. And again, when I first started teaching in the 80s, I was just thrown into a classroom with 25 little second graders.
Yeah.
All by myself, nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
And now through the state of Ohio, they have a program where as the mentor, I would help these young new teachers and to walk through their day to how do I work the copier? How do I, am I allowed to just go take a bathroom break even if I have kids in the classroom? And it's just, again, simple little questions like you said.
That again, that a more tenured professional takes for granted. They just know it.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody walking in off the street that's never been in that circumstance before, how would they know?
Right. Exactly. So let's talk about the real work of an intern. We met some amazing students at Cleveland State University this past weekend who had real work internships.
Truly.
In fact, they did such a great job. Many of them are going back to the same company this summer, and which we'll talk about later. They're going to get hired with the company. So talk about that real work. It's not getting people coffee or filing.
No. Well, and I'm going to choose a word or phrase that you used as we were leaving. That's exactly something I always say. And you said, these are not going to be entry-level employees. These are students that have already built 1 and 2 years of experience as an electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, or whatever it is, through their internship. So that's how significant this experience is. But here's what we see on the ground, right? So we've got these students, and again, when you go on a college campus, I don't care who you are, when you start talking to these students, you see how motivated they are, how excited they are to get into their careers and make a difference and practice their skills and so on. So that's what you have coming in. So there's that expectation from them that they're going to get that opportunity. Mm-hmm. And you've got a couple of choices. You either give that to them and it builds and develops them and they have a positive impression of your organization and you're able to get productivity and so on and grow somebody and have the satisfaction of that, but also the work, right? They're actually doing work, things that are significant. But by the same token, you could just say, do these errands and do that. And that's fine, right? They're going to earn their keep, so to speak. But what are they getting out of it? Little to nothing. And what are you getting out of it? Little to nothing. And I'm always curious, why go through the motions?
Right, exactly.
Why have this person do that? And I've seen these situations. I'm aware of a situation where someone was going through law school and they got an assignment in a company to work with a lawyer as an intern. They were a legal intern. That attorney they were attached to gave them little to no guidance, just had them doing busy work all the time. And it was a worthless experience. The intern was so miserable, they ended up reporting about it and just didn't even want to come in. It was a complete disaster. And why would we want to do that? Why would we want to take that? Because again, maybe you're intending to hire that person, maybe you're not, maybe down the road. But that's a representative of your organization. That's someone that's going to speak about your organization. They've got potential in the future. I just, for the life of me, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to make the most of it.
Well, and that's my next topic. We're really doing a good job with the segue in here today. We didn't even know it.
I'm good at it. It's a topic I'm passionate about.
So the goal of the internship is for that intern to become your employee. Yeah. And again, as you said, and when they become your employee at some point, they're not going to be an entry-level employee because they've already learned things through you. Yeah. So we talk about the importance, and I think I just read that about 70% of interns end up being employed by the company that they did their internship with. So talk a little bit more about that.
I'm so glad you put it that way. And then you gave the stat. Because what I'm going to speak to first is not the 70%. I'm going to speak to the 30%. Who are going to say, we're not going to have a role for this person after the end of the semester. Why would we, we're too small. There's this and that. Again, you've got someone there that can learn what you're doing and they can grow and they can develop. What's to say that 3 years down the road, that same individual who interned with you, had a wonderful experience, learned your organization, grew and so on, and you have someone leave and you need to fill that role. I don't know about you, but the first person I'm thinking of is the intern who's now graduated, built 2 years of solid work experience someplace else.
Yep.
That's who I'm calling because they already know my organization, but even better, I already know them. I know what kind of employee they're going to be.
Exactly.
And they're 2 years more experienced than they were when they started with them.
Exactly.
And again, sorry to cut you off there, but are they going to be receptive to that conversation? If they had a wonderful experience with you, I can guarantee you they're going to be receptive to it.
And why would you send that 30% off to another company after you trained them, you worked with them? If you thought they were super, they were really, really good, that 30% is going to go off to another company and you're left without a good employee.
You're starting this process over again from a recruiting standpoint, because ultimately that's what we're thinking about. We're looking for ways, and the internship's one of these, and we've got others, obviously. This is what we're very good at, is this whole talent acquisition. But internships are a wonderful way to create this pipeline. And it's an easy way, and I've been hard pressed to find a better way to build a pipeline that you already have some idea of what you're getting from a work perspective before they even work for you. Because the internship is one of those scenarios where they have worked with you. They've worked for you. And again, to your point, they can't hire them because, we don't have budget for it. We're staffed out. There's all these reasons why they fall into the 30%. But to your point, why would you still not have them in your mind to say, if we have an opening, I'm hiring Becki next, not John Doe, who I know nothing about, but Becki, who worked for us for 90 days, and we have a pretty good idea.
Exactly. So let's talk about paid versus unpaid internships. That's a little controversial.
Yeah.
We recommend anywhere from $15 to $20 per hour. Possibly their first internship would be $15, and then it's a sliding as they progress through your company in different years.
Yep. And depending too on what you're asking them to do. If you're asking them to do higher level things, we talked with some of our mechanical engineers and engineering students in general, they're more on the closer to the 20 an hour.
Yes.
I've worked with students who are graduate level who are making above 20 in some of their roles. Again, it's about what they're bringing and what you're expecting them to do. Because even if it were $25 an hour, it's significantly less than what you would pay a full-time employee. And again, I get why. I mean, I've been doing this long enough. I know why. But still, you're getting a pretty significant return on investment, depending on where they are education-wise. But I'm going to come back to one simple concept. I hear organizations talk all the time about being inclusive, right? I hear that term all the time. Inclusive. We want to include everybody.
Yep.
By having unpaid internships, you are automatically being not inclusive. And I'll tell you why. I fall into that example. You do too. And when I was going through undergraduate, I worked full-time. I worked full-time through that entire thing. I would work in the morning, or I'd go to school in the morning, work in the afternoon, and so on. The only way that I could do those internships that I worked is if they were paid. I could not quite literally afford to do a free internship. It just wasn't real. And there's a lot of students that fall into that category. And let's be honest here. It, of course, naturally, it's going to adversely affect anyone who is, already below, middle class. They're already lower income and fall into some of these groups. Of course, it's going to fall into them. It's going to impact them more because they're already in an income challenge situation. And now we're saying, you know what, work for us for 3 months at no cost. That's incredibly uninclusive.
Yeah. That and in 2026, that doesn't even make sense to do that.
No.
And unfortunately, in education, student teachers are still not paid for their internship. So, which is sad.
It's something we got to work on, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's kind of wrap up then and talk about our costs, because it's, we're not free. With our expertise, we are not free.
Right.
Let's talk about our cost versus what it would cost a company to start their own internship program.
So to rephrase what you said, we're extraordinarily cost effective compared to you doing it yourself. Okay, that's the first thing. But you're doing it on your own. You've got to have a staff member, at least one, who is going out and finding these candidates. However they're doing that, right? They're posting on Handshake. They're doing that. Maybe they're going to career fairs and so on. And by now, every career fair you go to on a college campus, it costs you money. There's no freebies there either.
Right.
So you're paying for that. You're paying for their travel. You're paying for their lunch. You're paying for their time. They're gathering up these candidates. They're reviewing them. They're seeing if there's a good fit. They're having conversations. They're following up and so on. You know what recruiting involves. Now imagine it just for this role, right? So they're going through and doing all that. And then they're setting up the interviews, and then they're following up, and they're doing, and they're hoping they picked a good person, and then so on. So that's the process. And the cost of that, it easily goes into the thousands of dollars. Again, you're paying this HR person $25 to $50 an hour to do what it is you're asking them to do. What we've described, even for one intern, can take literally hours of time. So, it's very quickly that we're into, even conservatively, one intern, one job. We're up into the thousands of dollars relative to the time and effort that person's putting into it, right? So I know where you want me to go with this, so I'm just going to follow that and say, let's talk about our process. We are continually working on our relationships with students and universities and career centers throughout not only Northeast Ohio, which is obviously where our biggest presence is, but throughout the country. We're constantly making those connections. And they're connections in a lot of cases that you and I have had for a number of years, because again, I've hired interns, I've worked with colleges, I've got these relationships. I'm members of several boards that are either directly plugged into colleges and universities, or they're adjacent to them. So we're constantly having these relationships, and we have not only our outreach, but sometimes they're reaching out to us to say, HRKyle, hey, we've got a couple students here, that are really good. We'd love to see them get a good internship. So they're coming to us as well. So again, you can come to us, and we have this happen all the time, and say, okay, I want to work with you guys. I've got an internship here. Here's who I need. And we're going into our database and saying, hey, we've already got 3 people, and we're already sharing 3 candidates with you. And then you say, hey, I'd like to interview these couple. Becky's reaching out and saying, okay, let me set up the interviews for you. And then they're interviewing with you. And then the follow-up, Becky's handling the follow-up, and she's handling all the other communication. So that $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 that you're investing as a company in time and resources and effort go away. And let's just lay the numbers right on the table. For our internship program, if we place one intern with you, it's $1,000 for the whole semester. Flat fee. We handle everything we just talked about, up to and including the follow-ups and all those other wonderful things. So we free you up to strictly focus on making the most of the internship on a day-to-day basis. So that's your role. Beyond that, the more interns we add, the cost goes down progressively. So it's not $1,000 for each intern. It's $1,000 for the first, and then it progressively declines from there. We're happy to work with you on a costing structure that makes sense for us and makes sense for you. But even in the terms of one client that we're working with, we're going to place 3 interns at $1,750 for the entire semester. For 3 interns, they've more than likely saved anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 pursuing this. And again, check my math, please. Look this up. Go through it and ask yourself how much time it would take to find 3 extremely qualified interns, go through the entire process that we go through, all the follow-up, everything afterwards, give you feedback after the semester's over so we can make the program better. Ask yourself how much that would cost for you to do it versus us.
Right. And one of the things that you pointed out too is that, your HR folks are there to help with the company and what they're hiring, their paperwork, whatever.
Yes.
The majority of them probably don't have time to be seeking out interns, which may be the reason why you're not doing it. So that is definitely something, bring us on board as a third party, and we definitely will help with that, because interns are needed in every aspect of the workforce right now.
Well, and again, it comes back to something I said earlier. I've not found a better feeder into my talent pipeline. And God, if it's 2026, you don't have a talent pipeline, you're way behind. I've been creating these for 30 years, so you're at least 30 years behind me. But if you don't have this as part of your talent pipeline, you're extraordinarily way behind, and you're paying way too much for talent, and you're taking way too much risk. And that's how our clients, and how I and Becki, when we were on our own, that's how we beat you in recruiting. That's how we did it, because I had these talent pipelines, and when a position came open, mechanical engineer, and they needed a couple years experience, I already had people I could refer to the role. I love doing that. I love the hiring manager coming to me and me saying, hey, give me a half an hour. And I send an email to them. Here's 4 people that I highly recommend that are definitely qualified. Think about how much time, money, effort, aggravation, everything else that shares for you. Yeah. Am I passionate about it? Absolutely. We're going to be easy to work with. You better believe it. But we like to generate results here. So we'd love to work with you. Becki, I know I'm hijacking this a little bit. You've got a closing here.
Just in closing, if you don't have an internship program and want to start one, reach out to us.
Yeah.
If you have one and want to improve it because of all the different things that we talked about today, reach out to us. And you can find us at HRKyle.com. You can find us on LinkedIn. You can call us at 330-541-5533. You can email us at info@hrkyle.com. Hope to hear from you.
Well, we got a lot of ways they can reach out to us. Hope to hear from you. We'd love to work with you and help you and make things more successful there. Other than that, let's wrap up this edition of HR Department. And Becki, for Kyle, thank you very much. See you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the HR Department, powered by HRKyle Services, your trusted partner for HR consulting, outplacement, talent strategy, leadership development, and career coaching. If today's conversation got you thinking, we'd love to hear from you. Be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the show with anyone navigating the ever-changing world of work. To learn more about our services, whether you're a company leader, an HR pro, or a job seeker, visit HRKyle.com. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, hiring with intention, and showing up for your people.